message.
Assalamu alaikum. It's your brother Landon X. This is Nation Town TV Live. And today we're going to talk about stool pigeons, sellouts, and the Opps. Yeah, the Opps. Let's deal with it.
I was told to deliver this message.
Three-o.
Assalamu alaikum, family. It's your brother Landon X. This is Nation Town TV Live. And as always, I want to greet all the Nation Town family chiming in. We're doing something a little bit different this time around because we actually broadcasting live off of the nationtownstore.com page, which will eventually become the main page that we broadcast off of via Facebook. So make sure, if you're not already a follower on nationtownstore.com, the Facebook page, then make sure that you are. And we're going to talk about, as I mentioned before, quite clearly, the latest issue of the Final Call newspaper, which is, of course, the #1 news not controlled by the Jews, deals with a hot topic, especially in the wake of the recent movie release the movie titled Judas and the Black Messiah, which deals with the story of Fred Hampton and, of course, William O'Neill, who was a government informant. But it comes right on the heels of that. It's not necessarily about that. But, hey, when it comes to stool pigeons, sellouts, and ops, who better to talk about that subject than the Nation of Islam? We have been victimized and had to deal with all three of those for upwards of 90 years. So we know that subject. In fact, nobody can tell that story or deal with that subject better than the Nation of Islam. But before we go any further, let me first start off in the proper fashion. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, who appeared to us in the person of Master W. Fard Muhammad, to whom praises are due forever, the long-awaited Messiah of the Christians and the Mahdi of the Muslims. Man, I love saying that. I further bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger with all due love and respect to Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah, peace be upon him, who the Holy Quran was revealed through over the span of 23 years, 1,400 years ago. With all due love, respect, and gratitude to him, the Holy Quran made me a promise and made you a promise in Surah 16, verse 36, as well as in many other places, such as Surah 10, verse 47. And then it alludes to it in Surah 14, verse 4, where it says that certainly a messenger would be raised for every nation. And that messenger, as far as I'm concerned, is the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, the man that you're looking at right there. And I would know nothing of Master Fard Muhammad, and I would know nothing of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad if it were not for this man, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, our divine leader, teacher, guide, that's Guide, and criterion in our midst. And in those three great names, I greet you in the words of peace. We say it in the Arabic language of Assalamu alaikum. First and foremost, again, Assalamu alaikum to the Nation Town family. I see you. And let me just say this, because it is the most wonderful time of the year. Happy Savior's Day. Oh, yeah, Savior's Day ain't going nowhere. We may not be all meeting up in the same city at the same time, but Savior's Day is Savior's Day. In fact, I was told by an elder once when I first came in the ranks that every day is Savior's Day, but especially when we get close to February 26th of any given year that Allah blesses us with. But let's get right down to it. But first, we're going to go back to something that we haven't done in a minute, but it's something that we're always going to do, even if we might miss an episode or two. We got to get back to the do-for-self city of the day. For those of you who might have forgot, the do-for-self city of the day is where we deal with a particular, or we just shine a light on a particular Black-owned business in a particular city, just for the sake of supporting Black-owned businesses. Now, one of these days, if it be the will of Allah, we'll be able to highlight these cities and these businesses on demand, meaning that it's paid for. But until then, and even beyond that point, we're going to do it for free, and we're doing it for free. But I want to point out one particular business, which is a business that really is filling a void in our community, especially considering the way our people spend money. And without further ado, I want to give a shout out, first of all, to the city of Oakland, California, which, speaking of the Black Panthers and Fred Hampton was, of course, from Chicago, but the Black Panther Party, of course, was born in the Bay Area. So we're going to deal with the Yay area, as E40 would say it. And we're going to give a special shout out to this particular brand. This is the Shea Collective brand. Shea, S-I-A, standing for somewhere in America. This is a Black-owned brand. You can go to SIAcollective.com. But here's the beautiful part. They sell original, top-notch athletic shoes. just like Nike, Adidas, and all that, but better. They all have a particular style to them. They have a very eccentric style. It's really a perfect sneakerhead brand for those of us that are hype beasts and sneakerheads. I used to be one, not so much these days, but this is something that our people spend a lot of money on. And if we're going to spend our money on something, it's only right that we, as black people, are producing the things that our people spend money on, if that makes any sense. I mean, whether you realize it or don't, it absolutely makes sense, because if somebody's going to benefit from our habits, then it might as well be us. So shout out to, again, the SIA Collective. If you can notice that brother at the bottom of the screen right there, if I'm not mistaken, that is the owner of the business. And like I said, they have a fantastic brand. My wife just bought a pair of shoes from them, and I expected it myself. I had to go back to my sneakerhead days, and I approve. They are made high quality, very good. Make sure next time you need a pair of shoes, a pair of kicks, holler at our brothers at SIA Collective. That's SIAcollective.com. All praises due to Allah. But moving along, as I said, we're dealing with stool pigeons, sellouts, and Opps. Now, we're going to deal with it, as always. Y'all know how Nation Town TV does it. You know, we're going to come at it from a particular angle, because what I want to deal with and explore is not only the aspect of stool pigeons and Opps and that kind of thing, but also ways to spot it when you see it, because stool pigeons and Opps, as well as sellouts, they've kind of changed their stripes. And what we're going to deal with on this episode particularly is the aspect of stool pigeons, or government informants or agents, and opposition, which is what Opps stands for. It's short for Opps. It's a word that's become very popular in the hip-hop vernacular the last few years. And stool pigeon is more of an old school term. And it's rooted in some say that it's rooted in a tactic for those who used to capture birds and different birds of prey. They would actually either take a real pigeon and tie it to a moving stool in order to attract other birds, particularly birds of prey, or they would create something that just looked like a real bird on a moving platform and move it around to attract other birds. Similar to some of the tactics they use in duck hunting and stuff like that, but it was used to always capture other birds. So it's now known in the vernacular as a stool pigeon if you are an informant or you're helping the enemy, the Opps, in a way that brings down a particular organization, particularly an organization that deals with the betterment of our people. So, first thing you want to deal with whenever you're dealing with stool pigeons and Opps, before I go any further, I didn't want to skip a step. Y'all know we got to give a shout out to nationtownstore.com. And as I mentioned before, we are currently broadcasting directly live from the nationtownstore.com Facebook page. There's the Nationtown TV page, and then there's the nationtownstore.com page. Why is there a nationtownstore.com page? They got something, the Opps got something called shadow banning that they've been doing on social media to all those who lift the name of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. They are severely shadow banning Nationtown TV. You can tell when we have 40, 50 shares of a video, but you only see 6 or 7 people on live at that time. That's because when they're sharing it, they are squeezing down on that. But regardless of that, make sure you share this, share. Everybody watching, make sure you share. It won't cost you a dime. All you got to do is hit share. We're going to put pressure on these devils one way or the other. But of course, brought to you by nationtownstore.com and also doforself.net, which is the inspiration for the Do For Self city of the day. And one thing that we cannot forget, $. Nation Town. Hit us up on Cash App. Show your Nation Town some love. The Nation Town family, thank you for all the support and love that you've shown, as I say. And as I want to remind you, 10% of all donations that go to our Cash App, $Nation Town, does go to our Yes Ma'am program. The Yes Ma'am program, a meal and a message, where we provide not only a meal, not only a message, but also personal care products, masks, PPE, fresh, wholesome food to our people in need. All praises are due to Allah. So let's get down to it. Shout out to everybody chiming in. I see you, Brother Barron. I see you, Brother Malik, Brother Hakeem, Sister Teresa. All praises are due to Allah. So let's get with it. Let's get with it. Stool Pigeons, sellouts, and ops. Now, I'm gonna probably save the sellout thing more so for a future episode, but we're gonna graze. We're gonna touch on sellouts a little bit indirectly. But I mostly want to deal with the idea of agents and provocateurs, stool pigeons, that kind of thing. First and foremost, definitely hit us up with your questions and your comments as we go through here. But here's what I want to say. Here's what I want to point out. We don't intend to be long, but we do intend to be strong. You cannot talk about stool pigeons, sellouts, ops, agents, provocateurs without dealing with the modern father of those things, which is, of course, your homeboy right here, or you could say your homegirl. We'll talk about that in a moment. This is, of course, J. Edgar Hoover, and he is the father of what's known as the counterintelligence program, known for short as COINTELPRO. You cannot mention a stool pigeon without mentioning this man. Just like you can't mention basketball without mentioning Michael Jordan or Kareem or Kobe or LeBron or Magic. You cannot miss out on mentioning this demon without mentioning the idea and the process of being a stool pigeon and an informant. He revolutionized that wickedness as far as I'm concerned. But the interesting thing is, it's called COINTELPRO. Now, that's short for counterintelligence program. Counterintelligence. Let's get into that word counter real quick. Counter, as a verb, is to speak or act, check this out, in opposition to. So COINTELPRO is OPTELPRO. It is the ops. Let me make that clear to my family watching this, to my young brothers and sisters, younger brothers and sisters, I should say, that are watching this. When we say ops in today's hip-hop vernacular, it's been denigrated and deviated into basically meaning some nigga that you don't like and don't like you. Meaning another brother or sister that look like you that don't like you. And that's what it basically means when we say, when you hear a young brother say the ops, he's not talking about his real enemy. He ain't talking about your homegirl, J. Edgar Hoover. He's talking about just some brother that he probably got into it at the club with, somebody who's from a different gang, different set than he's from, whatever the case may be. But your real op, as it says in the name, COINTELPRO, is this man you looking at right here, and the mind of this man and the works of this man. And we're going to touch on those things in a moment. In fact, we're going to touch on it right now. Because the COINTELPRO program, as you saw it on the movie Judas and the Black Messiah, you saw it in the Malcolm X movie, if you were paying attention. They even made an actual movie about J. Edgar Hoover, where he was portrayed by, his name escapes me, but he's a well-known white actor. But in these movies, you see the phone taps. You see the undercover agents. You see those kind of things take place, and I find it a little disappointing that when people talk COINTELPRO, they are usually they only think of those things. They only think phone taps, agents, that kind of thing, paid agents, provocateurs. But the spirit, the evil spirit of COINTELPRO goes so much deeper than just phone taps and agents. That's how it was born. That's how you met COINTELPRO. In fact, we didn't really learn of the tentacles of COINTELPRO until the late 70s when the Freedom of Information Act was passed. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But the Freedom of Information Act made it so that whenever the government files paperwork on anything, it is public information after a certain time. And to me, that just reminds me of how in what we call the poison book, also known as the Bible, if you notice, in the book of Genesis, the devil is portrayed as a garden snake. The kind of snake that slivers between the blades of grass, sneaky, slivering, slinking. But then by the time you get to the last book of the Bible, which is the book of Revelations, the devil has matured into a full-blown dragon. And the fictional understanding of a dragon is this huge flying reptilian beast that breathes down fire, has a massive wingspan. He's about the size of a 747. So he goes from this slinking, sneaky reptile to a very overbearing and obvious and blatant beast that breathes down fire, meaning that this devil that we know as our Opp, the Caucasian, has went from being sneaky and very clever and very careful to really not giving a damn, to the point where he will admit what he's done. He will actually file and distribute documentation of what he's done because he knows, A, he is the devil and he has solidified his post as such. And then he knows that you don't read. He knows that you're not going to sit down and take the time to research. You're going to go off of emotions. You're going to go off your own desires. So anything that you already don't want to believe in or don't like, you're going to sit back and go with anything that goes, even if it's coming from your real Opp. Your real Opp. But the tentacles of COINTELPRO has went so much deeper than just phone taps and agents. For example, the spirit of COINTELPRO has taken us to the point where it's been very vital in the prison industrial complex. It's been vital in not only breaking up black organizations like the Nation of Islam, Black Panther Party, us, SNCC, things like that, but it's also broken up the black household. Because of mass incarceration, because of the fact that they've done such a, because understand this, J. Edgar Hoover was a huge fan of movies. And he also was instrumental in Hollywood producing more and more gangster movies. But here's what J. Edgar Hoover always pushed on Hollywood, because he would actually serve as a consultant on gangster movies, like the original Scarface. A lot of you don't know that the Scarface that came out in the early 80s, starring Al Pacino, was a reboot. It was a remake of a movie that came out much earlier in the film industry that was largely based on the original Scarface, the real life Scarface, which was Al Capone. But here's what J. Edgar Hoover pressed Hollywood on. He said, I will help you make these movies. However, you have to always paint the gangster as crazy and as the villain, and you have to always paint the police as the hero. Now, that's trickled all the way down to your favorite movie, Black Panther, where a comic book movie about a brother with special skills. The actual hero, the low-key hero of the movie, was a CIA agent. See, that's the spirit of J. Edgar Hoover living on. But then you have the breakup of the black family. This is where black people have been given, black men have been given such a negative image. And we've been put in such a negative situation where now you walk into 70% of black households. Not only is the black man absent, but the black man's approval rating in these households is rock bottom. I mean, let's just be honest. A lot of us grew up in black households where the black man's name wasn't worth nothing. Your mama was saying niggas ain't shh. Your sister was saying niggas ain't shh. Your auntie was saying niggas ain't shh. So if you got a little boy and a little girl growing up in that household, the little girl, she's thinking, man, when I grow up, I don't even want a black man. And then the little black boy is thinking in the back of his head, when I grow up, I don't even want to be a black man. And then you wonder why the homosexual agenda is so out of control. I mean, think about it. Most of us over the last 40 some odd years have been growing up under a culture that hates the black man. Even if you're a black man, even if you're a so-called heterosexual black man, you have a negative connotation of black men in your mind. That's why when I say Opps, the first thing comes to your mind is a black man that you don't like. Not J. Edgar Hoover. When J. Edgar Hoover is actually responsible for some of the most heinous things that ever happened in our community. But you think about another black person, particularly another black man, when that word op comes up. But like I said, op actually means to speak or act, or counter, I should say, the counter in counterintelligence, to speak or act in opposition to. So counter means op. So let's move along. Not only has this spirit affected the black family, where you have whole black families, because look at this picture. This is a fatherless family, but it's not a male-less family. You see, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 males in the picture. But where's the father figure? You see the mother figure in the middle. But not only that, but like I said, they go to Hollywood, where every time the black man shows up on the movie screen, 9 times out of 10, he's the bad guy. He's a snitch. He doing for himself. He's just all about getting over for himself. He'll turn state's witness on his own homeboys and all of that. He can't be trusted. He's just always trying to get a leg up for himself. He'll pull you down, your mama down, your sister down, whoever, to get up on himself. And then if you turn to the news, that composite sketch, that fitting of the description is always us. Even in situations where we are 100% innocent. Some of you may be old enough to remember situations like Susan Smith. Susan Smith was a white girl who killed her own babies. And the first thing she said after her children came up missing was that a black man stole her child. And they spent 2-3 weeks looking for a black man based on a composite sketch. But those are just the ones where it is later exposed that she lied. How many of the situations where it was never exposed that the black man was innocent, that composite sketch that you saw on your screen was false? Sometimes you never find out. Instead, a brother like me or brothers like whoever's watching, you get pulled over, asked to step out of the car. Why? Because you fit a description. So we're constantly fitting a description. And what this causes, as I said, is this negative connotation about black men in general. Why is this important? Family, this is important because this leads to J. Edgar Hoover's overall goal. He had a mission statement for the FBI and for the federal government and its attack on black organizations. His mission statement was clear. His mission statement wasn't to stop the rise of black organizations. His mission statement was to stop the rise of a black Messiah, wheresoever he would turn up. Now notice, there was no adjective put before Messiah other than black. He didn't say black radical Messiah. He didn't say black violent Messiah. He didn't say black Christian or Muslim or whatever kind of. He said black Messiah. What if that Messiah? I mean, when you read Bible and Quran, the word Messiah is used in a positive context. A Messiah is a savior of any people or the leader of the Jews, if you look up the definition. Messiah has never had a negative context until it came out the raggedy mouth of J. Edgar Hoover. So why is that? If you really want a group of people to be better people, you pray for them to have a Messiah. You ever had some rowdy neighbors who make a lot of noise or something, or they always up to something? The police always over their house. Sometimes black folks say something like, man, that nigga need Jesus. You need Jesus. That's what you're saying. You're saying you need some kind of positive person in your life, in that person's life, to make them a better person. So if you really think that black people are bad people or untrustworthy, all the images that he put in our heads, if that's how you really feel, then you should actually support a black Messiah. I'm talking to the J. Edgar Hoover-minded Pecker Woods and black people of this world. You should want to support, you should want to believe that God came to a group of people and then raised up a messenger for that people. If you really think that we need that, and in all truth, we do. But you talk to the typical racist-minded Caucasian or black person or Asian or whatever, they'll tell you nothing but negative things about us. Some of it is rooted in truth. I mean, if somebody's sick and they bleeding to death, don't you think they need a doctor? If somebody is illiterate and can't read, don't you think they need a teacher? So why is it such a crime? Why is it such a criminal act for a black Messiah to be raised for us? That's the question that we got to ask ourselves when it comes to our federal government and J. Edgar Hoover and anybody that operates with his mind. Let's move along. Like I said, we don't plan on being long, but we do plan on being strong. Here's another thing to consider. Not only did it lead to the breakup, or was it instrumental in the breakup of the black family, comments, but not only is it instrumental in the breakup of the black family, instrumental in the way media portrays this, but it also leads to a mentality that black people have that nobody else has, no other ethnicity seems to have in the world, especially in America. Y'all know I like to make up terms, but they always make sense, even though they made up. One thing that all of this has led to is what I call goth syndrome. And when I say goth, I'm not talking about weirdo white folks dressed up with pale makeup on and black fingernails. No, goth meaning get out the hood mentality. Y'all know what I'm talking about. We're the only people who see getting out the hood or getting out of the neighborhood in which our people live as a measure of success and as a goal. All of us, from the Opps to the sellouts to the stool pigeons, we all see getting away from our own selves as success. Very few of us ever see it as a goal as, let me make my hood, my neighborhood, a decent place to live. I mean, after all, we always using that possessive language, right? My hood, my city, my set. You ask somebody, you run into somebody that's from New York. They'll tell you, oh, yeah, New York City, my city. They from Atlanta. Atlanta, my city. Dallas, that's my city. LA, yeah, that's my city. Okay, if it's your city and you banged your hood, or that's the neighborhood that you're from, and you call that your hood, your hometown, why don't you have a mentality of making the most out of it? See, that's not how COINTELPRO raised us. The COINTELPRO that's in the spirit of the Caucasian in his world is constantly telling you that anything directly tied to you is insufficient and is of poor quality. And if you ever want better, you have to borrow it or have it shared from someone else. That's why you don't see that beast as your real op. You actually see him as another 3-letter word. You see him as your God. So you're constantly begging him, praying to him, protesting to him, all of which means the same thing. And you want what he has, but you don't want it for yourself and your people. You just want to feed off the teat of what he's built, what he really built on your back. But with that get out the hood mentality, that's another thing that lends to what I'm about to get into. Because when you don't see the value in a group of people that look like you, it is always easy for anybody to buy you out. It's always easy for you to turn on your own people. It's always easy for you to be a stool pigeon when you have that goth mentality, that goth syndrome, where it's get out the hood, get away. If William O'Neal, the person, I can't fix my mouth to call him brother, but the person that was an informant in the Chicago chapter of the Black Panther Party, if he loved his people, then it would have been impossible for him to do what he did. I don't care how messed up his financial situation is. I don't care what kind of jacket they tried to put him. By jacket, I mean, charges that they tried to bring him up on. As you saw on the movie, he was a car thief. He was facing some years, and the years they were throwing at him really wasn't that big. When you're talking black folks, we facing real years every day. You got brothers still in prison from the 90s over weed charges. And that's a fact. He was facing about 5 to 7 years. And for 5 to 7 years and about $300, he brought down one of the greatest young leaders that our people in the Western Hemisphere has ever seen. But let's check this out. Shout out to everybody chiming in. I see you, Brother Malik. Make sure y'all sharing this message, share this message, get it out there. And of course, hit us up, NationTown, $ NationTown, Cash App, show your love, independent black platform. But here's some things to consider. Because all of those things that I just went over is set the stage for what I call COINTELPRO 2.0. Because there are about 3 types of stool pigeons that really didn't exist 50, 60 years ago. Because like I said, 50, 60 years ago, our unity was so strong. It wasn't perfect, but it was so strong that the enemy really had no choice but to get somebody like William O'Neal, who already had a jacket on him, already had charges over his head, and send him into something like that. But now the remnants and the tentacles of COINTELPRO have cut so deep that now you have about 3 new versions. They talking about these COVID-19 strains, these new strains that are popping up. There's new strains of a sellout, new strains of a stool pigeon, of a op that have grown over the last few decades, I should say. One in particular is this right here. This is what I call the pro bono agent. And by pro bono, that is a legal term that deals with someone who does legal work for a client without charge. That's what pro bono means. It's essentially Latin for no charge, no cost, denoting work undertaken without charge, especially legal work for a client with low income. I call it a pro bono agent because we hate ourselves so much, and that hate has simmered and marinated and cooked for so long here in the Western Hemisphere, and especially since, integration, the sin of integration, as the most honorable Elijah Muhammad put it. We hate each other so much, and we hate ourselves so much, that a black man or black woman will do the work of a stool pigeon, the work of an agent, the work of a William O'Neal, free of charge. Nobody got to sit you down in an interrogation room and threaten you and scare you. And No, you just do it. Anybody that's watching that has ever been in any type of organized black movement or organization, you know what I'm talking about. Black people who come into organizational movements and just because of their own personal self-hate or temporary demeanor or for disappointment, they will let that disappointment tear down that entire movement, or they'll allow themselves to be a clogged artery in an entire movement just based off their own feelings. That's what a pro bono agent is. You really didn't have pro bono agents 50, 60 years ago. They were either sent directly by the government, and that's it. Now you got pro bono agents who just get in their feelings once or twice. Envy, jealousy, that kind of thing. And that makes them want to tear down a movement no matter how detrimental that movement is to our people. What's another type? We kind of touched on this a moment ago. This is the Stool Pigeon production. Or I should say the stool production. I crossed out pigeon. It's more like the stool production. These are movies that are used to paint a negative depiction of a positive black movement. They real slick with it. They pull on your emotions. They pull on your self-hate. They pull on what you might already think based on the COINTELPRO work that they've already laid down, the tracks that they've already laid down. That's the interesting thing about train tracks. Once you lay down train tracks, you can improve the train all day. Now, all you got to do is just run that new train over those same old train tracks. They come out with new cars every year. Every brand of car has got a new model every year. But you notice they don't change the streets and change the highways. They might repave it a little bit, but the highways stay the same. And that's what these movies do. They keep that energy in your mind through carefully and slyly dropping little seeds on you while you sit up here and be entertained. That's what I call a stool production or stool pigeon production. Now let's move on. Let's keep it moving, keep it moving. Then you got this right here. You got the stool puppet. The stool puppet. What is the stool puppet? See, don't forget a stool pigeon itself originally was a pigeon that was tied to a moving platform. See? But the stool puppet, see, the puppet itself doesn't always know what it's being used for. If you ever seen a puppet show, you can't really tell. I mean, if the puppet really did have a mind and feelings, it doesn't know that it's being used for what it's being used for. That pigeon that's tied to a stool, that pigeon is just a pigeon. It doesn't even know that it's being used to capture other birds of prey. It's just tied down. And a lot of times we get tied down by becoming puppets of the process. Which brings me to this. And this is a point that I got to dig into a little bit, family. Keep in mind, provocation is puppetry all day and twice on Sundays. Now, what do I mean by provocation? The root word of provocation is provoke. We become such an emotional Negro, such an emotional person. We got all these feelings. That's also a tentacle of COINTELPRO. Because with 70% of our households being manned by women who are naturally emotional, a lot of these men, whether they turn out gay or not, they grow up with this intense amount of estrogen in them, physically and mentally, because a lot of the food is chock full of estrogen. So we so emotional. So one of the tools that the COINTELPRO 2.0 uses is provocation. They know. Especially now with social media is a petri dish of a wicked scientist. Now they know. Even Facebook, before you even type something in, it's got a question already on there. What's on your mind? They want to know what's on your mind because they take that information. On the best side, they take it for the sake of advertisement and what to sell to you and when to sell to you and how to sell it to you. But they use that same information to provoke you. So now more than ever, a young brother or sister will see something on social media and there go the strings. Now you are constantly being provoked into saying this, doing that. And you think you just thugging it out. Oh man, that's just the kind of nigga I am, man. You say something like that to me, I just get it. Bro, you ain't doing nothing special. They knew you were gonna react like that. They knew you were gonna be talking like that. And it's a domino effect. When you set up a dominoes to fall, you can set it up in a way where it'll fall just like you want it. So always remember, provocation is always puppetry. So you got these people, you got these brothers who think they're so woke, think they're so intelligent. You think you're so tough, but when you get to the point where all you got to do is see an image, all you got to do is see somebody on social media saying something, and it immediately moves you in a certain direction, you are now a puppet. I don't care who you think you are. I don't care how many guns you got. I don't care how long you've been in the nation. I don't care who you know. I don't care what your name is. No. You are now a puppet. You Geppetto's boy. If I'm not mistaken, I think Geppetto was a Jew. So with that said, family, let's keep it moving. Now, another thing to remember, especially for my believers that are watching, shout out to everybody chiming in. Make sure y'all hit us up, questions and comments if you see fit. But another thing to keep in mind, in our supreme wisdom in the Nation of Islam, it starts off with something called the instructions given to the laborers. Before it gets into any doctrine, any mathematics, any lessons, it starts off with instructions, like most things do. And in those instructions, you see this. Big fields are awaiting the wide-awake man to work out. Big fields are awaiting the wide-awake man to work out. That's in our supreme wisdom lessons, instructions to the laborers. Why is this important? Let me ask the viewers something, whether you're going to watch this on Facebook or on YouTube or whatever platform we post it on. Do you think the black man and the black woman and the Aboriginal man and the Aboriginal woman need work? We need work done unto us. We in need of some help. We in need of some we need to get tweaked a little bit. We need to get tuned up a little bit. Do you believe that? Do you believe the job of helping black and Aboriginal people is a tough job at this point? Do you think it's a hard job? Do you think it would be, or that it is a time-consuming job? You think so? It is? Really? Okay. I agree. I agree 1,000%. But here's the thing. Remember that when you get on social media or you see it anywhere else, and you see people who consider themselves freedom fighters, they consider themselves woke. They consider themselves dedicated to the betterment of our people. But instead of dealing with those big field, that big field is talking about us. But instead of dealing with that big field, they instead spend that time wanting to debate, wanting to argue, wanting to be in your comment sections, talking crazy. Be careful with those kind of people. Because with that much work needing to be done for our people and on our people, if you catch somebody with enough time to spend all day with another black man's name in their mouth, being an op to a particular organization or school of thought, you are looking at an op. You are looking at an op to an entire people, because there's too much work to be done. Too many. Pay attention. It says big fields, plural, are awaiting the wide awake man, singular. That means every black man, Aboriginal man and woman has big fields, plural, to work out. I don't know if y'all know this or not, but farming is hard work. Can't see in the morning, can't see at night. Whether you a slave or you an independent farmer, farming is hard work. Our people need to be cultivated. It is not a clock in and work for 3 hours and clock out kind of job. It's just not that kind of job. So if somebody has the time to just argue all day, and really to argue at all, you're probably looking at an op. Now let's look at this to back up that point further. Because here's the thing. If you see somebody that's constantly hating on another organization, constantly arguing, that means that the fields that are awaiting them, so teaches our supreme wisdom, the fields that are awaiting them are just growing weeds and crabgrass, going uncultivated. There's no produce coming out of that. There's no fruits coming out of that field. There's no harvest coming out of that field. And what happens to dirt and to land when it's not being tilled and cultivated is that it becomes hard. It becomes very difficult to cultivate, and it produces, again, crabgrass. Now, we've all heard that term or turn of phrase, crabs in a barrel. Well, crabgrass is a thing that grows out of the ground of uncultivated ground. But let's look into that, because it'll tell you a little something about these kind of people. It's beautiful when you can look at science, and it can tell you about social science as well. The question is posed, how do you get crabgrass? It says seeds begin to sprout in mid-spring at the beginning of a thing. As soon as the soil temperature reaches 55 degrees Fahrenheit, and crabgrass can quickly become a problem during the summer because it is able to grow vigorously in hot, dry conditions. You can compare that to in hot, meaning very emotional or trying times, or in very successful times. Crabgrass is an opportunistic annual weed that will grow in thin and bare spots in your lawn. So those weak believers, those weak members of your organization, that's where the crabgrass can be found. How do you deal with crabgrass? It says, between midsummer and early fall, each crabgrass plant produces thousands of seeds, always dropping seeds. The first frost kills the plants, but the seeds remain dormant through the winter. When the ground temperature warms up, check this out, the seeds begin to grow. Again, that increase in temperature. The key to crabgrass control is making sure the seeds can't germinate. How do you make sure that the seeds cannot germinate? You have to be constantly working, constantly pulling them up or tilling the ground, constantly working. So I have to say to my brothers and sisters who you consider yourself a freedom fighter, you consider yourself a revolutionary, you consider yourself doing something for the betterment of our people. If you were really doing so, then it would show in your fields. You wouldn't have to mention what anybody else is doing. Special shout out to those who have something to say about this man, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. Now, before we get out of here, we're about to get out of here in a minute. Again, make sure y'all sharing this message. We're going to deal with some of the red flags. I don't really like saying red flag because, Nation of Islam, my flag is red, as you can see, top right-hand corner of your screen. We're going to deal with some of the white flags to look out for when it comes to stool pigeons, sellouts, and ops. What are some white flags to look for when weeding out the stool pigeons? Let's get into it. The first thing is this right here. This is a personal favorite I'm going to start off with. I believe that's an actual pigeon. This is a meme that I saw on social media. Does somebody come look at this kind of Negroes on social media? What do I mean by somebody come look at this kind of Negroes? the somebody come look at this are the ones who, when something positive is going on that relates to a particular organization, even them being a part of that organization, they don't really say much because that's the work. The work is hard. The work is tedious. They don't have much to say about the work. But when something comes up where there's an op or some type of opposition that comes up, somebody talking crazy about this person, that leader, this organization, this ideology, they want to form a lynch mob. They want to get a bunch of like-minded people to get on social media and just start talking crazy to this person or to this whatever's going on. There was a very important scene that probably went over a lot of people's heads in that movie, Judas and the Black Messiah. And in this scene, William O'Neill showed up one day to their headquarters with a car trunk filled with C4 explosives. C4 explosives. And Fred Hampton, being the intelligent young brother that he was, he said, man, you got to get the hell up out of here with that. Yeah, we believe in a revolution. Yeah, we hate the pigs. Yeah, we hate the system, but you going too far. You're going too far with that. And the way you going about it, it don't even, in fact, that should have been the biggest white flag for them, that he was a provocateur and a stool pigeon, just for the simple fact that he would take it to that extreme. Just off top, let's just blow up City Hall. When you got something that's as deep rooted as white supremacy, just blowing up something ain't gonna do a damn thing. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Timothy McVeigh blew up an entire federal building in Oklahoma City in 1995. Trust me, I used to live in Oklahoma. The government in Oklahoma didn't miss a beat. Trust me. Because I got homeboys I grew up with doing Fed time, and they got their Fed time right around that time. So I know the federal government didn't miss a beat just because Timothy McVeigh blew the face off a building. So when you see these Negroes, these come look, man, did y'all see this? Man, you see what little so-and-so and so-and-so, little Hotep pyramid said about the Nation of Islam? You see what this little Negro said about, man, we ought to cut his head off. We ought to do this. Be careful when you see these type of people. Be careful. Because you might be dealing with an actual agent or a pro bono agent. Because that's provocation. Hey, everybody, come look at this. I know you might have saw something that upset you on your computer screen, on your cell phone. I get it. But the leadership that you call yourself defending, how would they approach? How would they handle that situation? In fact, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that our best defense, since we always talk about defending our leaders, defending Farrakhan, our best defense at a time like this is to simply be who we say we are. If you say you're a Muslim, you say you're a Christian, you say you're whatever, be that. Be the best of that, and that is always the best defense for whatever you call yourself doing. But let's go into some more white flags that lets you know that you might be dealing with an agent, either pro bono or paid. Let's get into it. And also keep in mind this, I brought this up a few episodes ago, it's worth repeating. This is from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, paraphrasing. He said, whenever you repeat slander more than 3 times, you become complicit in the slander. You become an accessory to that slander. Now keep in mind, when the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said this was long before social media. But another way, the main way to repeat something on social media is to share it. So when you see slander, when you see something negative, don't be so quick to hit that share button. Do you need attention that bad? See, maybe I just don't understand, because see, I grew up the youngest of 4 children, and I was the only boy. So by the time I was 10 years old, I was drowning in attention. So some of us have this thirst for attention that will bring up something, even if we know that it's a negative message, we will assign ourselves as the marketing executive for somebody that we call the enemy. You calling them the enemy, but you're promoting that enemy and what they believe more than you're promoting what you say you believe and what you stand for. Who do you really work for? That's my question. That's my question. Moving along. Here's another white flag. This is from this wonderful book, The Restrictive Law of Islam is Our Success. You know, as believers, we have to pack a 38. No, I am not talking about a gun. In the Nation of Islam, the 38 that I'm talking about is our 12 general orders, our 16 restrictive laws, and our 10 guiding rules of conduct. Number 15 of that restrictive law is slack talk and gossip is forbidden. Slack talk and gossip is forbidden. Now, I got to touch on this real quick because slack talk is not about facts or feelings. Slack talk is how this information being said about a brother or sister is being distributed. If it's being said and that brother or sister is not present at the time, it does not matter who you are. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't even matter if it's true. When you start talking negatively about someone and they are not there at that time, you are slack talking. And as we're taught in the nation, slackness leads to weakness, which leads to wrongdoing. So if you're talking about another brother or sister and they're not there to defend themselves, first of all, if you're the person being talked to about that person, you should feel like that person is trying to punk you because they chose you to pull that small time stuff on. They thought that you would be, or they feel that you are naive enough to just take that slack talk, even though you don't know it to be true or not, and just believe it on face value. So they basically treat you like boo-boo the fool. So you should be offended as the person receiving this slack talk in your ear. And you should also take the initiative and say, hey, let's call brother and see how he feels about it. Especially if it's something that's extremely slanderous, something that's really explicit. But even if it's something basic, you should be careful with that because this is another white flag of a stool pigeon because they're sent in to do a job. Listen, today, in my humble opinion, this is just my humble opinion. The days, shout out to everybody chiming in. I see you, Brother Tevis. Wa alaikum salam. The day of the teletype agent, I think, is over. What do I mean by the teletype? The person who just goes into an organization just to find out what they're doing. That, you know, especially like the Nation of Islam, our purpose is printed on the back of every issue of the Final Call newspaper. It's called the Muslim Program. That's all you need to know about what we're doing. It's what we want and it's what we believe. Our meetings, most of our meetings are open to the public. And we ain't really tripping about it. When we do a security search, we ain't really looking for no wire or nothing. We looking for something that could actually harm somebody. So it's not about it ain't these little secret. It's the enemy that do all these little secret meetings or enemy-minded Negroes, the Opps. So the day of, and the enemy knows the purpose, the sole purpose of every organization or every leader. They know what this leader is trying to accomplish. That's why they working against them. So they know that. So the teletype, the court reporter type agent, I think is obsolete. Now what you have are provocateurs. They come in to start some if you feel where I'm coming from. They coming in to put this brother against that brother, this sister against that sister, this sister against that brother against that sister. That's what they come to do. So when you around somebody and they always sit around talking about slack talking, just saying what this brother ain't doing, that brother did, that brother, this sister, that's a white flag. And another reason why I'm calling it white flags instead of red flags is because the source of it, the source, and the mind that they're using, that's a white man's mind. Causing trouble amongst the righteous, telling lies, or hell, even telling the truth. Why now and why me? That's the question you should always ask when somebody's always coming to you with bad news. In the Holy Quran, as Muslims, we're taught to always bring good news to the believers. Why are you talking bad news to me all the time about somebody else? Bring them here into this conversation, and then we'll talk. And hopefully be able to atone and have an atonement message. Because a lot of us think if we reach a certain level of knowledge, or we reach a certain point in our Islam or in our Christendom, or whatever the case may be, or we a Black Panther with the most guns, or Hotep with the most Hotep t-shirts, or Hebrew Israelite with the most fringes, that we think that we can never be a victim or ever be used as a puppet in slack talk. But I see it all the time. I've been on the receiving end of it, where individuals have come to me about something somebody else told them, instead of contacting me at that exact point where they got that information and believing it to this day. That's because they wanted to already believe it even before the slander hit their ears. They already wanted it. Their ears were already yearning for it, already craving it. That's something to think about. Moving along. We won't be on much longer, maybe about 5 to 10 more minutes, but I got a couple more points to touch on. Before we get out of here, we got to deal with this. The Judas factor. We got to deal with the Judas factor. Now, I think we simplify Judas. We simplify him too easily. Because the thing, you just calling him a traitor, I think that's letting him off the hook, and you're not really. We got to benefit from Judas. We got to look at his mentality, because the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, told us that 3/4 of the teaching of Jesus in the Bible is actually prophecy, not history. So, and then the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches us that every so-called character of the scripture represents a people, not just a person. See, there are groups of Judases. There are groups of people who are constantly playing the role of a Judas. And sometimes they don't even know it. Could you be a part of a conspiracy and not even know it? Hell yeah. And the easiest part is when you allow your emotions to get the best of you. Because see, here's the thing about your boy Judas. Your boy Judas, it wasn't the 30 pieces of silver. He never spent it. In fact, he ended up coming back to the Sanhedrin and throwing that silver on the ground and saying, here, man, you can take this back. And then he killed himself. What was really the root of Judas was a couple of things. One, there was an incident that's found in the 4 Gospels in the Bible, but particularly took place in the 12th chapter of John. That's the best place to find it, because John, I like John. We gotta, like I just mentioned, in the Nation of Islam, we got a mantra that's a part of our guiding rules of conduct, to report all slackness, weakness, or wrongdoing. In the Bible, John, he reports the slackness and weakness by name of Judas, because you find the same story in other Gospels, Luke, Matthew, but they don't call out Judas by name. John called him out by name. He said Judas took issue with a woman who came to Jesus, and because of the good works of Jesus, she massaged and cleaned his feet. She even used a very expensive oil and cleaned his feet with her own hair. And that made Judas feel some kind of way. And I'm going to tell you, when it comes to us, and by us, I mean men, especially black men who've been made so estrogenic and so emotional nowadays, and our egos are so fragile. Some of us, boy, one of the easiest ways to get under our skin inadvertently is to make us jealous and to make us envious. Sometimes just a female just showing you special attention can just breed millions of crabgrass, enemies all over you, all around you. Just because a woman showed you some love. Just because a woman just batted her eyes at you or just said how well you did something. So here's this sister cleaning Jesus's feet with her own hair and with this expensive oil. And Judas, he got all screw faced and he was like, why you wasting all that expensive oil? You could have employed 300 people with that oil. I mean, wait a minute. Ain't this your man? Ain't this Jesus? Don't you love him? Aren't you one of his apostles, one of his disciples? When he is celebrated, you should celebrate right along with him. Even Jesus himself in that scripture, he said, listen, man, because Judas tried, and this is what a Judas will do. A Judas will try to always use deceptive intelligence to cover up their envy and their hate and their slack talk. Well, that money that you spent on that oil, we could have used it to feed the poor. Jesus was already doing that. So Jesus said, listen, the poor, it's always going to be plenty of poor people, but it won't always be a Jesus. So she's just showing her love to me. And then there was a point where Simon also questioned it. And he said to Simon, he said, listen, I think the parable he used was two people that were in debt. He said, if one person owed a debt of 50 denar, which is gold, and then another person owed a debt that was over 100 denar, and the debtor actually expunged or forgave the debt of both of those individuals, which one do you think would be most grateful? The one who only owed 50 or the one that owed over 100? And Simon said, of course, the one that owed over 100. He said, well, there it is. He said, that's why this woman is blessed, because Simon took issue with her being a sinner and Jesus saying that this woman was blessed. The sinners need blessings more so than somebody who thinks that they're not a sinner. That's the point that Jesus was trying to make. So pay attention to your own feelings when you see other people being celebrated, because it can bring a lot of Judas up out of you. Another thing about Judas to keep in mind is that Judas, and you got to really dig in the scripture to figure this out. Judas and really all of the disciples, they got to a point where they really believed in Jesus. Some of them even joined Jesus because of this, because they thought that Jesus would overthrow the authorities. He would overthrow the government of that time, the Sanhedrin, the Jews, even the Roman authority. They wanted him to be a politician. They wanted him to run for office. They wanted him to be the king, especially when he showed up in town riding that ass. No, really, he was riding a jackass. And he was celebrated. They gave him a Roman parade. They cheered for him as if he was a king. And the disciples loved that. They loved that. They thought, oh, man. They were even starting to jockey for position as to who would be in what post and get what title and which title when Jesus became the actual king. Because the disciples just knew, hey, if my man become king, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be that, I'm going to rule over this, and I'm going to rule over that. So when it became clear to Judas that Jesus wasn't tripping on being no king, he was just there to reflect his God. When they saw that, they saw that Jesus didn't want no parts of the way this white man ruled his world. Some of them lost faith, and one of the main ones that lost faith in Jesus was Judas. So Judas thought he knew better how to do Jesus's work than Jesus himself. Oh man, I used to be. Tell me if this sounds familiar. Oh man, I used to be down with Jesus, but you know what I mean. Cause me, I'm all about, man, overthrowing the government. And, oh man, Jesus, he just talk all that, God stuff and all that, man. You know what I mean. See, that's another thing that bothered Judas. He started to lose faith in Jesus being who he said he was, because he can only think in terms of this world, the world as it currently stood. Because if you really are thinking about overthrowing a government, if you overthrow a government, that means you throwing the government away too. At least that government. See, Jesus was planning on a different government. See, a lot of us don't really want a different government. We want the same damn government, and we want a special position in that government. That's all some of us really want. But when we see somebody that got a higher cause, we lose faith, because our faith is really not in that person or in God at all. Our real faith is in the system that we say we hate. Now, moving along, family, shout out to everybody chiming in. We won't be on much longer. I just want to knock out these few points. I see you, Brother Brandon. He says dissatisfaction, envy, and pride. That's the Judas Kool-Aid. Absolutely. Dissatisfaction, envy, and pride. But another thing to point out, what you see right here is from the 12th chapter of John, which I just pointed out. As I said, Judas started tripping because this woman was cleaning Jesus's feet. But check this out. This shows how much of a master Jesus is. I didn't say was. And I ain't talking about no blonde-haired, blue-eyed, Kurt Cobain-looking devil that your grandma got on the wall when I say is, present tense. But check this out. The very next chapter of John, it says, after that he, meaning Jesus, poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel with which he was girded. See, this is Jesus who turned around and cleaned the feet of his disciples, particularly Judas. So here he was mad because a woman washed Jesus's feet for the work that he's done. But Jesus at the same time is washing their feet, the disciples. See, the point in that is this. Sometimes we'll lose sight of the good somebody is doing because of our own emotions. See, his emotions of seeing a woman cleaning Jesus' feet blinded him to the fact that Jesus himself is the type of brother that would clean your feet. But you just in your feelings because you see what people are doing for him. Sound familiar? I'm sure it does. Let's keep it moving. Shout out to everybody chiming in. I'm about to close out. But there are a few other white flags to look out for. A few other white flags that you got to look out for. I like this one right here. Pocket supporters. Brother Landon was a pocket supporter. Pocket supporter are those that support someone or something until it begins to bear fruit. This is a very common Negro tendency. You even see it in hip hop. But you see it really with everything when it comes to our people. We pretend to like someone and support someone as long as we feel like they're in our pocket. Meaning that, I'm the only one that knows about them. I'm the only one that's aware of them. They're not really benefiting from what they're doing. I'm the only one that's doing it. They're my little secret. But then when their good works establishes and starts to bear fruit, now, if you really on their team, you would be like, man, I'm so happy to see my guy or my girl or my sister or my brother getting what they deserve. I remember, man, I remember when nobody checking for them, but man, look at them now. That's my guy. But when you start to see them receive all the accolades that you swore up and down they deserved back in the day, you start to feel some kind of way about it. That's because you were not really a fan. You were not really on their team. You were not really an apostle or a disciple. You just liked to have them in your pocket. But you really had a disease in your heart the whole time. Moving along. Another issue Another white flag, disciplinophobia. Yeah, I just made that up. These are my brothers and sisters and Negroes who are afraid of any black construct of leadership, rules, and restrictions. Now, the interesting thing about that, the root word of disciple is discipline. So you can't even fix your mouth to say the word Judas if you yourself are allergic to discipline. Judas was allergic to discipline too. He was a snitch. He was a turncoat. That's not much discipline. There's no discipline. Like they say, there's no honor amongst thieves. There's no discipline amongst snitches. So a lot of us who act like, oh man, I can't take no instruction from no black. I'm my own man. I don't follow no man. This is the same Negro who end up in jail, and he got some, CO that damn near is getting paid minimum wage. Tell him to bend over, spread his butt cheeks, and cough. Yeah, that's a discipline right there. You following instructions, then you working in prison for 20 cents an hour. But you scared to work for your people outside. But, that's neither here nor there. And then we got the PPOPs. What are the PPOPs? These are the people who put personality over purpose. Personality over purpose. These are the people who try to affix themselves to personalities. Oh, man, you see, brother like me, I'm a Farrakhan man myself, but since such and such, I ain't really with it. Oh, I'm a Dr. Khaled type brother myself. Oh, I'm a Malcolm type brother myself. But see, the thing about all three of them, what made you love them was the purpose that they stand on. That should have been the thing that made you love them, but that's the thing that made them to manifest the personality that you fell in love with, was the purpose that they stand on. If you just a personality worshiper, then brother, you ain't no different than a groupie. You're a groupie. That should be even if there's a revolving door in the way God works. You notice all the prophets and messengers in the Bible and Quran. You notice all the students of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad that have come and gone. All the students of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan that have come and gone. That's by design. Because God knows, Allah knows that we're some personality worship. So He's going to keep that revolving door coming. He's going to keep that rolling to see who really is about that life. And who's just a groupie. Who just wants somebody to fix themselves to. Because you heard them talking tough about the enemy and that made you feel good. Oh, brother, go listen to an album or something. Go listen to some music. If all you looking for is to hear somebody talk tough. But if you about a purpose, that purpose is always bigger than flesh. And it's really better than flesh. And that's really what you saw emitting through that brother or sister that made you love them. You saw a purpose. So the PPOPs are the ones who put personality over purpose. Moving along. And then we come to this. This is very important before we close out. What about Big Peter? I think we talk, when it comes to stool pigeons and sellouts and Opps, we talk too much about Judas. And we forget about Peter. Now, in the long run, Peter ended up all right. But Peter did something that we should study. Because Peter was the biggest talker of all the disciples. You can say what you want about Judas, but Peter was the one who swore he was the biggest, baddest soldier for Jesus on the map. He said he would kill for Jesus. He would make sure that didn't nobody lay a finger on Jesus. In fact, when the Roman authority, and he kind of backed it up now, because when the Roman authority came to take Jesus into custody, as you can see in that image, he cut one of the Roman authority figures' ear off. But there's a deep science behind that. He cut his ear off. That Roman soldier who got his ear cut off, his name was Malchus. Malchus. He cut his ear off, and Jesus saw this and he stopped the whole show and said, wait a minute, man, what's wrong with you, Peter? And then he went and he healed the ear of Malchus, replenished Malchus's ear. When you see magic tricks in scripture, that lets you know that there's a deeper meaning. You got to know how to read it like it's, you got to read past the poetry and all of that. It's not cat in the hat. It's actually science. Because sometimes those of us who try to be all extra, regardless of who we say we represent, whether it's a Hebrew Israelite to say he represent what they teach, or a Muslim to say they represent Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, or a Muslim under the teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad that say they represent Farrakhan. We try to come so militant and so hard sometimes. And it's an off-putting example, whether we realize it or not, and it cuts off the ears of those who could in turn someday be followers of this man and this ideology that we say that we like. You cutting off their ears to the point where they ain't even trying to hear what your man is talking about. So Jesus had to come down and replenish the ear of Malchus. But the real interesting thing about Peter is that when it mattered most, Peter denied Jesus. Acted like, because you got a snitch on one side, Judas, and then you got this selective amnesia on the Peter side. All of a sudden they came to Peter and said, Peter, didn't we see you? Didn't we see you with Jesus? And Peter played it off smooth. He was like, Jesus? I don't know nothing about no Jesus. Jesus of Nazareth, you used to roll with him, man. You've been rolling with him all this time. You was cutting off ears and all this. Oh, Jesus? No, I don't know a nigga named Jesus. Jesus? Oh, you talking about Jesus? Jesus Jones went to Crenshaw. He was playing it off. He played it off 3 times. This is the one who was kicking up the most dust. The most dust. Go on social media and see if you find some Peters. See, Peter cut that ear off. If you want to look at the ear cutting literally, Peter cut that ear off because that's just how Peter got down. Some Negroes looking for a fight. Some of us, we had so much self-hate that we looking for somebody to argue about anything. We ain't in the streets no more. We ain't banging no more, whatever. We ain't in prison no more, whatever the case may be. So now we want to bang on something else. We want to bang on a book. We want to bang on the Quran. We want to bang on the Bible. We want to bang over ideology. We want to bang over politics. We just looking to bang. So Jesus saw past him cutting off that ear. That didn't impress Jesus, because Jesus knew Peter. Peter, he an ear cutting type of nigga anyway. So I ain't impressed with that. Because when it counted most, Peter punked out. So that showed that Peter's motivation wasn't about really protecting Jesus. He was just looking for ears to cut off. He was looking for people to argue with, looking for people to be different from. He was a contrarian. He just wanted a platform to argue about. But when it came time for substance, when it came time for purpose, Peter punked out. So yeah, be on the lookout for the Judases. That's important. But don't sleep on the Peters. Let's keep it moving. Shout out to everybody chiming in. We're about to be done in just a minute. The very last point that I want to bring up. Here's a question you got to ask yourself to make sure that you're not a stool pigeon, sellout, or an op. When it comes to relationships, they say things like, what's your compatibility with the person, with the kind of person you're looking for, or a particular other person? What's your compatibility score? So I urge everybody that's watching this to ask yourself, what's your federal compatibility? What's your compatibility with the federal government? What you're looking at right here might be a little confusing to those who don't know. This is your boy J. Edgar Hoover with his boyfriend, Clyde Tolson. Real talk, straight facts, all facts. That's his boyfriend. He's actually buried right next to him in a federal cemetery. He did everything with Clyde. I mean, they went on dates together and everything. And I'm not dissing him for his lifestyle. That's how your girl, that's how she got down. But the point is this: you have to ask yourself, what's your federal compatibility? What do I mean by federal compatibility? The picture is just a little bit of levity, but what is your federal compatibility? What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, brothers and sisters, you have to ask yourself, and I do this sometimes. I do this a lot, actually, because we all have opinions that are not always educated about things that we really are not 100% abreast of. But one thing that can move me off of my opinion is if I know that the federal government of the United States of America feels the same way. I will immediately move away from that opinion. Immediately. Until further notice. Until I get some facts. Now, if I just happen to know facts and the government also recognizes those facts, then that's one thing. But if it's just an opinion and I see the federal government of the United States, the greatest enemy to the Aboriginal man that has ever existed, when I see that they feel a certain way about a thing, I immediately wash my hands and step back and say, wait a minute, something's wrong with this picture. I'm agreeing with the government. That's why it's interesting that when you go into the federal files, when you utilize the Freedom of Information Act, you go into the COINTELPRO files and you look up a case number CG 25-330971. Why have I remembered and memorized a federal case number? Because that's the particular document where the federal government admits that they challenge the validity of Master Fard Muhammad, the long-awaited Messiah of the Christians and the Mahdi of the Muslims. The only way they challenge his validity as the man that he is, God in person, is so they can disband and disrupt the Nation of Islam. They wrote it themselves. They put it down in their own paperwork. Let me show you something. Like my man, Fire Marshal Bill used to say. This is from the actual federal document in which I just gave you the case number to. You can look it up yourself, and I'm going to show you how in a minute. It says, and this is the federal government talking, in connection with efforts to disrupt and curb growth of the NOI, extensive research has been conducted into various files maintained by this office, Chicago, the same office that William O'Neill came out of many years later. Among the files reviewed was that of Wallace Dodd Ford. It is felt that if the whereabouts of Allah, notice they just called him Allah. They didn't say alleged Allah. They just said Allah. That if the whereabouts of Allah could be inconclusively determined, the impact on Elijah Muhammad and his followers would be tremendous and could well serve to make Muhammad appear ridiculous. What is your federal compatibility? How do you feel when we say that we bear witness that there is no God but Allah, who appeared to us in the person of Master Fard Muhammad? Are you 100% compatible with the federal government in saying that you don't believe in that? And is your belief based on facts and research, or just feelings and religious dogma and religious gangbanging? You might be very compatible with the United States federal government. You snuggled up with them just like Clyde Tolson is snuggled up with them right there. You might very well be the perfect girlfriend, the perfect babe, the perfect jump off of the federal government. If what you say about the Nation of Islam, or really any other black organization that is for the betterment of our people, and you feel the exact same way that J. Edgar Hoover feels, you might be in perfect compatibility with the federal government. Congratulations. I challenge you, if that's the case, to go to noi.org/COINTELPRO. It has everything you need to know. This devil has told on himself. He told on himself about Malcolm. He told on himself about the Nation of Islam. Everything you need to know. But see, here's the thing. Going back to those supreme wisdom lessons, it tells us what this white man already knows. See, in Lost Found Muslim lesson number 1, question number 7, it poses a very important question that you see here, right here. Why does the devil keep our people illiterate? Answer: so that he can use them for a tool and also a slave. He keeps them blind to themselves so that he can master them. Illiterate means ignorant. See, they know you don't read. You say facts all day, facts, hashtag facts, facts. Oh yeah, that's facts. We didn't sully the good name of the word facts now. Because you say facts about something that you ain't did no research on. And they know you don't research. They know you don't read. So they use you as a tool and also a slave. Everything you need to know. This devil is in plain sight now. He's flying over your head, breathing down fire, because he knows you ain't going to do nothing about it. With that said, I appreciate y'all sticking it out for me. I'm going to leave y'all as I greeted y'all in the words of peace. Assalamu alaikum.
I was told to deliver this message.